So I am Lee Powers. I am the Director of Operations here at KS Management. I do a little bit of everything for all the companies, and then I will let them introduce themselves.
Yeah, so you can probably guess I'm Nicole out of this lineup. I've been with KS for about 2 years. I'm one of the managers who does some of our high-rise properties. I started in this industry from Florida, so it's a bit of a change coming up here and having to deal with snow contracts. That's a little about me.
My name is John Bennett, also a community manager here. My focus is usually on condos. I've been here for about almost a year and a half. I'm working for KS.
So next slide, we're going to start off with a little humor.
Oh, we love our new home. Neighborhood's great.
Amazing school district. The HOA has been very involved.
These shrubs aren't board approved.
You need to break down your cardboard.
Thank you.
Violation. Violation.
I see you've met Cynthia.
At least Geico makes bundling our home and car insurance easy.
And does help us save a bunch of money.
2 inches over regulation.
Thanks, Cynthia.
For bundling made easy, go to geico.com.
I love that.
So that's the opinion that a lot of people have of
condos.
Condos, HOAs.
Yep.
You've probably all seen the defund the HOA movements and things like that. So we want to dive into, I don't know why this keeps moving.
And also Nicole.
We want to dive into some of the more nitty gritty, like the board side of it and what goes on.
Perfect. All right, so we'll go ahead and start off with an introduction. You guys have kind of already made this first step in being proactive board members to be here at this webinar. So we want to kind of talk about the ways to effectively enforce the governing documents of your individual association, your rules and regulations, but maybe not quite at Cynthia's level. Okay, so community governance. John, do you want to talk about generally what is that?
So community governance, it usually think of it as, your violations, and monitoring things, the restrictions of your community or community guidelines is probably more what they call it now. They can also, deal with your modification requests and things that you may or may want to do to their property, whether it be an HOA or a condo. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just think, one of the first things we think about when we think about community governance is obviously your bylaws and your master deed. That's where we're going to start, as your foundation. So there is a ranking order in which one of those supersedes. So, you have your federal and state laws, your master deed is going to be next, the bylaws are below that. Your rules and regulations are below that. So you're always going to want to make rules and regulations that, are just a complement to your bylaws. So those are kind of the main documents where we get what we're going to do in these communities, how we're going to enforce it. And a lot of it is dependent on the boards. Some boards have particular things that they like to see that you guys know your community. So, we take that feedback as well when we're inspecting the properties, issuing violations, and things like that. Let's see. So the importance of community governance, just quickly on that, I think you guys understand, as board members, what, you have a fiduciary duty. There's a lot of regulations on you. So we always recommend you to get these educations where you can. So it's important to understand how we send violations, really, for instance. So one thing that we really encourage is fair across the board, okay? So I always try to make it a point to not know where the board members in my communities are, because when I'm going around, I like to see this either is the standards of the community or it's not. And so if you're making sure you're doing that fairly, enforcing everything fairly, then you're following your role as a board member.
Yeah, and I think it's important when you think about governance as a board member. There's rules and there's laws in place in the state of Michigan that protect you as board members. If you're acting in the best interest of the community, if you're making fair decisions across the board, if you're using good business judgment, not playing favoritism, If the association gets sued for any reason, judges are gonna look at that and they're gonna side with the board. If you're going through saying, I don't like this neighbor, send them a violation, but this one's fine, that's when you guys get yourself in trouble as board members and you don't have that protection. So it's important, as Nicole said, make sure you're uniform across the board. Make sure you're fair. If there's something that you question in the governing documents, run it by your association's attorney. Just to make sure that you guys individually are protected. You're just volunteers in the community. You don't want to put yourselves in a liable position by doing something that would get you in trouble.
Yeah, and it's tough for board members, right? Because you live there. So these are the folks that you see all the time. And that's kind of where we come in as the managing agent to kind of be that vehicle to kind of, let you be not the active day-to-day person that gets all the complaints and has to deal with these things. But at the end of the day, you're the ones that are responsible for the decisions that are made. We just act on your behalf.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, we forgot to lead with that. So we have a section at the end for questions, but if there's something like pertinent that jumps out that you're like, ooh, I want to talk about that, go ahead.
Well, you just had mentioned the attorney, and I just wanted to know, are board members allowed to contact the attorney if they feel that some issues are justified for that? Or is there a process that we have to follow going up the ranks to get to that attorney?
Yeah, so individual board members should not just reach out to an attorney. If there's something that a board member thinks should go to an attorney, it should be a discussion with the board or reach out to your community manager and let that avenue happen.
Okay.
Because it can get dangerous if two board members are fighting and each of them reach out to the attorney and it just gets messy. So
Okay, so then you just start off with the property manager then?
yeah, start with the
Okay.
community manager and let them kind of champion it from there.
Okay.
Good question. Okay, governing documents. So this is kind of, like we said, the bread and butter. Every community association, once you're established, you're going to have these governing documents. So like we know, it's going to consist of your bylaws, master deed, rules and regulations, articles of incorporation. So there's a lot that goes into that. You guys, I'm sure, have, as board members, have been into your governing documents. You've read these. It's not always the easiest thing to understand what they're actually trying to say here. So when you're looking over these and you're interpreting it, your interpretation might be different than a previous board's, might be different than mine, the manager, or whoever, an owner that might want to dispute you on something. So when we talk about interpreting documents, governing documents, that's something you definitely want to get your attorney's opinion on. If there's a question, one of the big things we see a lot is maintenance responsibilities. We always encourage our associations to have their attorneys draft up. We call it a maintenance matrix. And it is basically, show of hands, who's had the maintenance matrix? Yeah, it's really great. It's a good tool. It's usually pretty affordable from your attorneys. They go through your master deed and bylaws. And they're going to give you basically a spreadsheet that goes down, roofs all the way down each item, and it's going to say association co-owner. So then you really have that kind of just easy tool. It's not up to the manager to look in the documents. Oh, I think that this is what they're trying to say. The drywall, this is this, situation. It makes it very clear. So, more clear you can have your governing documents, the better. So one thing about having clear documents is when we talk about amending governing documents. Have any of your guys' association gone through a full bylaw document revision? Fun process, isn't it? Yes. Yeah.
You're the only one excited about that in the room.
Let's see, and you guys are going to get excited about it because we're going to have to pass these amendments. And when you do a document revision, there's a couple different reasons you're going to do that. If you're a brand new association, you're probably going to have some decent documents written, hopefully, if you have a good developer. But either way, you should have your attorneys look over your governing documents. We can tell you kind of our opinion on things, but we're not attorneys. So it is best to have them look at it. They're going to look at these governing documents. And if you still have documents that were written by your developer, they're going to be written to be advantageous to the developer. It's going to be, you can't sue the developer for this. You can't do this. It's not really to protect the association. So when you guys take over control, you have control, you want your attorneys to review this, they're gonna make up a whole list of recommendations on what to change. There's some, just archaic language that you need to get out, get the new Condominium Act requirements in your governing documents. It's definitely it's a financial obligation. It is costly to do that. You're paying for a lot of time with your attorneys, but they do really walk you through because it is a process. And it's, when you do amend governing documents, typically you have to have a 66 2/3 percentage majority of the membership vote approval. So it's not just a board decision. So that's really what is, I think that's probably the most difficult aspect of bylaw amendments. Would you agree? Is getting the participation?
It is, yeah. And the attorney may recommend that when you do amend your bylaws, you change the threshold to reach that, which I think Trentwood did to down 50% for a lot of things. But there's a lot of examples of things that they would recommend changing. A lot of the older documents have like a negligence clause in there where, say, if a co-owner had something that leaked into a lower unit, it would state that you can only try to get funds from that person if it was negligence. Well, if a dishwasher leaks, it's probably not somebody's direct fault. So it's kind of archaic language that they'll help you move through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point on negligence. And just to kind of maybe simplify that, basically, if you have this one word in your documents, the association may either have the responsibility to file a claim and pay the deductible or not based on this one word. So that cost alone, usually to pay a deductible, it's like, I should just revise the documents for this cost, and you don't have to worry about it anymore.
I would say another amendment that is very important to do, especially if you have older documents. You guys all know annual meetings. How great of a turnout do you get? Yeah.
Right.
So an amendment that a lot of communities do is a thing called a shrinking quorum. So there's an amendment that can be put in place to put a shrinking quorum into your governing documents where you call an annual meeting, you don't have a quorum, you can adjourn it, call it back in 48 hours, and your quorum's cut in half. And you can continue to do that until you hit a quorum. Because we have some communities they won't have a quorum and they haven't had a quorum for 20 years. So technically, the board of directors was never elected. It's just whoever volunteered and has been doing it for the last 10 years. So that's a way that you can actually call an official meeting, have people officially elected, and get that quorum by implementing that shrinking quorum. And depending on your governing documents, it may be something that the board can do themselves. It may not even require a community vote.
I think the new thing is finding different avenues to get your quorums, right? Like amending your documents to address hybrid meetings, where maybe there's an in-person side of it and a virtual side of it, so you can get more engagement. Because especially a lot of younger folks, they don't want to go sit in a room and listen to people talk about their association, but they might join from their computer. So, the amending documents to find better ways to get engagement, is another thing. Just make sure you're protected in that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. Another, when we're talking about amending governing documents, one kind of big one that you're starting to see more as the courts have kind of tightened down on things is smoking violations in condos. That one it's been a touchy subject for years, especially with when Michigan legalized recreational marijuana. That added to smell of smoking complaints. It used to be something where, okay, well, we can send a notice for a nuisance, but the courts have really tamped down on that. So if associations, if it is really a problem, I see this more probably in high rises or more connected, building type associations, but it is something that you're going to want to address if that's an issue, and that would require a bylaw amendment. So that's a good example of something that where you can make a separate rules and regulation policy. You can't make a rule that goes against your bylaws. So unless your bylaws say you cannot smoke in this building and the membership approved it, you can't make a rule as the board and say no smoking in the condo. So that's a big one we've seen. Questions on governing documents amending? I'm sure there's some questions on this. Sir.
And you were talking about a shrinking quorum.
Mhm.
Okay, let's say we get it down to 10 people. What if a subject comes up that there's 10 other people want it? Can those other 10 people show up at this one meeting and change everything?
No, so the shrinking quorum would be for meeting attendance, not for something like amending bylaws or passing a loan, stuff like that. You can't do a shrinking quorum on. It's simply just to get attendance at a meeting, typically to elect a board.
You can't even do that.
Yeah. That's why you need to get shrinking quorum.
I took 9 people with me last time, other than the boards. 12 showed up, counting my 9.
Oh.
So,
We had, what's the one you had the other night, John? It was the board and one co-owner at an annual?
Yeah, really fantastic board,
Yeah.
fantastic community. And, you know, one co-owner showed up besides the board.
It can be tough to get engagement.
when,
You know what?
when do you have these meetings? Typically,
Annuals?
the annual meeting.
It depends on the property. The board really knows best usually if it's a largely retired community, maybe they do them on a Saturday morning. If it's a younger community, maybe they do it at 7 p.m. at night on a weekday. It's really the board who knows the community best that usually makes that decision.
Well, what I'm thinking about is life is a lot slower for my community, like January and February. But yet, others insist that we have it in April when everybody's getting busy.
Well, and that's something to look at in your governing documents too, because a lot of governing documents call out specifically when the meeting has to be held. So you would want to look at your governing documents and see if that's the case where it has to be held in April for some reason, which is something, again, as Nicole said, you should amend out because it's very restrictive.
As far as reaching a quorum, we do ours. Yep, you can email in or you can mail it back in. You don't have to be at the meeting to reach your quorum. So we usually end up reaching a quorum by just doing that because if they're mailed in, the balance is. I had a comment on amending your documents. So our complex had our documents amended back in 03, 04 and approved. And then at one point I was off the board for a while and apparently I got back on and the board was trying to redo the documents and they had an attorney. And I finally raised the question with our management company. It was a prior management company, the KS. And I said, how much are we spending already to amend our documents? And nobody knew. Nobody on the board could tell me. The board treasurer couldn't tell me. They didn't know. They said, well, please go back and check in the management documents. They came back and told us at that point, we'd already spent over $17,000 trying to amend the documents. And the problem was so many people on the board showed up at meetings and they acted with emotion. It was like, well, I'm sick and tired of this guy washing his car out in the street in front, so I want us to designate you can only wash cars in certain places. And a whole bunch of things were being put in there that board members were dealing with emotions or personal opinions that were not beneficial to the complex as a whole. And all kinds of money was going into this attorney continuously redrafting and not telling him. And when you read the bylaws that he was trying to administer, it looked like it was an apartment complex, not a condominium complex. So don't let the emotions tear it up. I mean, if you're going to do this, do it in a smart, intelligent manner. And the other thing is we always said, don't put a law in effect that's not enforceable. If you can't prove that somebody's doing something to get a violation, don't put something in the bylaws that you're not going to be able to enforce anyway.
Yeah, great points, Bert.
Yeah, those are really good points. And actually, as far as, several board members reaching out to the attorney, I think that kind of goes back to your question. That's one thing is, all they're seeing is the authority from the association. So, they're getting direction on something on this point today. It's, if we're going to change it this, from a different board member tomorrow, that's a great point. And the attorneys will happily answer your email because they charge per email. So.
Yeah. Yeah, we know that one.
On reaching a proxy, if you don't reach the quorum, if you don't reach the quorum, like in our case, oftentimes we will have the same board members run for re-election and nobody else is challenging. Technically, even if you don't get a quorum, Your bylaws usually dictate that the board members continue until a replacement member is elected. So automatically, even if you don't have another annual meeting and you don't get a quorum, those people continue to serve regardless, because your bylaws dictate that if a quorum wasn't reached, nobody else has been elected to replace them, and if nobody else is running against them, then you're not worried about whether you had a quorum or not. A lot of mailings, a lot of crap to go out if you have to keep rescheduling meetings and sending out more information.
It's kind of funny. I always told people that I get out when I retired. I retired and a week later our president quit.
Surprise.
Funny how that happens.
Here I am.
Hey, quick show of hands real quick. We have a lot of stuff around annuals here. Would you like to see a class solely on annuals, getting attendance, what to do for annuals, that kind of stuff? Would that be beneficial?
Yes, because we have a hard time. I'm out at Hawthorne Woods there in New Boston, and getting people to show up is one thing. And the thing is too, a lot of them are older. They don't even know how to use a computer. They don't even do anything. And so we have very low attendance because they figure if nothing's wrong, I'm not going to go. So it's like, okay, because I moved in about 10 years ago and I volunteered for it. I'm still there. But then they said,
I'm sure that's how everyone in this room got on the board. You volunteered at one point and you never left, right?
Yeah. And then the thing is, they'll come up to you when you get paid. I said, no, I don't get paid.
Well, you know, that came up at our place. It's eliminating a percentage of your fees if you're on the board. And you know what? We got people calling me asking if they get on the board.
Funny how that incentive works.
Check your bylaws. Check your bylaws.
That comes right off the bat.
My question is, why do you want a lot of people to show up at the annual meeting? My question to you, why do you want people to
Well, they just, because then they go back and they complain, and it's like, well, if you don't attend, then that's yours.
Yeah, if they don't have complaints, you don't want them there
Yeah,
anyway.
well, that's it, but it's just like, then they complain, well, you don't do anything then anyway. Well, attend the meetings. We don't know what's going, well,
Yeah.
that's what the meetings are
That's a
for.
good point, and kind of like what you said, there is a lot of associations, it doesn't really matter how much you do, you're gonna get low attendance, and often that is when you have a really well-run association. You know, and people just think, they're doing a good job, they'll keep going, you know, until there's problems. So you get a lot of attendance sometimes, like let's say you put out a letter saying if you need a lot of attendance, we need to raise dues pretty significantly next year. Then you get, you know, a lot of people to the meeting and,
Yeah, well,
okay, well, maybe we'll tone that back a little
we
bit.
did increase the dues because, we're having to look at roofs.
Yeah.
So, and then it's like, some of them, well, I'm retired, I can't do that, and, you know, it's just.
That brings up a good point, because that's tough. You know, I think we'll touch on this more in our financials, but, you know, you guys do hear those stories, and I'm sure, you know, you even feel it yourselves, you know, when things are tight, but when you're making the decisions for the association, you know, it has to be put those behind, and, you know, what is best for this association is we have to tighten up, we have to save for those roofs. So you have to be good at separating that, for sure.
Can we change something without a quorum? Like a safety issue?
Like what? Give an example.
Well, all of our bus drivers are having fit. Our roads are a little bit narrow. People parking on each side of the street, they have a hard time getting through. Everybody I talk to, I says, I want to make the mailbox side no parking. Everybody says yes, but nobody comes to the meeting about it.
Well, there's usually township regulations for how wide your roads can be, where there needs to be like a fire lane.
I'm sure it's at the minimum.
Yeah, it's usually, depending on where you're at, you know, it's usually 26 to 32 feet. You can only park on one side. If it's under 26 feet, no parking. So there's usually a township regulation that it would back you up if you had to put something in place.
Well, I know we were in the condos, and then the other ones with the homes that came in. And some of them just do what they want. And we put up signs where there was no parking. Some of them would take them down or throw things over it so you wouldn't even see it's there. And the thing that's bad with us is they have a different association than us. And it's like, I've had my mail stopped because they don't care. They'll park in front of our mail, you know, and it's just makes for a bad.
And it's the kind of rules that you have to be able to enforce. So there's got to be a dedicated authority behind it to say, you know, we're going to call a tow company or.
Well, that's
you know.
the thing, because the police we've had where people had a rescue one time and they were not able to get through because of the streets being. But some people there, it's like the police say they can't do anything. You know, so you're in a quandary. What am I going to do? But some people, they just don't care. You know, they just do whatever, and then they make it harder for the others.
That's true.
But ours isn't too bad. But it's the homes that have come in there.
Yeah,
and have made it bad.
Sometimes it can be tough when you have that joint, those kind of joint agreements with associations.
Well, excuse me, but that was another one of the things. We have our association, and supposedly they have one, but then a number of the people quit or they moved. So it's like, we had thought that at one time we could get together with both, but have no idea who's on their board or even if they have anything yet. Because I know KS has taken over there. They used to have to do certain things, and now I guess they do the streets now for both areas.
Interesting.
So,
yeah, just one more point on, I think on the roads that you bring that up. I don't think this was mentioned. It does depend too on if you're talking about private roads or public. So it's always good to check with the fire marshal, the fire chief of your city or township. Usually, in my experience, especially if it's private, it's really going to be the board's discretion as to how they want to do that. One of my communities, for example, in Woodhaven, you know, we talked to the fire marshal and just said, you know, what do you recommend? We want to keep a fire lane, and he told us that you need to have a fire lane. Put it on the sign that has the fire hydrants. Simple enough. So
we have problems with the stop signs. Nobody stops. They just keep going, and
you're kidding. You like that? So
there's no police or whatever around, or how do you give tickets, or how do you even warn them? And it's like, oh, it blows the mind, because it's right there, right on my corner, and there's a little playground there, and it's like, oh, they just keep on going by, and our president lives right on the street there, and it's like, what do you do? Who gives a ticket, or even how do you enforce that? I mean, that's private.
We got this bill, and we brought to the police chief
Yeah.
and asked him for patrols. Now, our roads are private. And the board gave him permission to send his cars in there and issue tickets if need be.
Well, that's the thing, because some of them will just say, oh, this is just a warning, but it's like, how many warnings do they get?
That's what they did. They only issued warnings at first for like the first month, and then after that it was an outright ticket.
Yeah, well, it's a small community, and a lot of them don't want to stir up, so they just go to the house and say, you know.
It's up to the board.
Yeah, so I would recommend in this situation, I would talk to your manager and have them reach out to the police department. Several of mine, it's really pretty simple. Basically, the police departments generally just need a letter from the association saying that you guys can come onto our property and enforce the traffic laws. So I have that several of mine. It's just an agreement with the city or township. They'll come in and patrol the area. It's not a perfect solution because it's hard to get them there at the right times, but you know, sometimes we've seen, you know, more issues than others, and we'll just give them a call and say, hey chief, things are ticking up again. Can you pick it up in the neighborhood a little bit? And they're usually happy to do it. So I would encourage you to reach out to your manager on that.
They have done a couple of things, because we were even thinking of putting the
Speed bumps.
Yeah.
But the problem with speed bumps is that if the car gets damaged from them, you're liable.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to education too, right? So if you take the time to tell people why they need to slow down, why they need to stop, and lay out the worst, you know, the consequences if they don't, and you know, teach people something new, and they might, you know, hopefully comply.
Linda offers to chase them down. So let's jump into our next kind of portion here. I want to make sure we somewhat stay on schedule. So going into compliance and violations, I'll let, after Nicole takes a drink, sorry, or the time drink, I'll let her lead into that aspect.
Yeah, so first thing with the community standards, you'll hear some different terms for this, rules and regulations. I know, some of you might be looking to maybe have a little more encouraging language. So community guidelines is something that's maybe a little less harsh, that you can do as in addition to your bylaws to kind of clarify anything that's, that's left ambiguous out there.
And these can be, like a one-page document covering several items. They can be individual policies that the board has signed and put in place. One thing is important to note, like any rule that you put in place needs to have like a 30-day window where, you give people time to, absorb that information before you start enforcing that.
Good point. Yeah. And then, so if you don't have a separate standalone community standard, rules and regulations or guidelines, something like that, it is definitely recommended. Like I said, it can't go against your bylaws. It's really an addition, kind of a one-page, just simpler thing that you can, really just put the main topics that you really want people to know, like, no charcoal grills on the balconies, just those kind of, simple things. Parking is one. So if that's something, boards usually draft that how they like it. We can assist in that. Your attorneys also are a good resource they'll draft those rules and regulations specific to your governing documents. Take violation.
I personally would like to know about any violations or penalties that you issue before you send them the letter. Some of these things I can take care of with a simple phone call.
Yeah. You take that?
Yes. So, not a great answer. From a legal standpoint, the association needs to document if there's a violation. So there needs to be a letter that goes to them, maybe a follow-up phone call to supplement it. But if something happens in the future, the association needs to have it documented that they noticed a violation.
Yeah, that's understandable. I would still like to know about it before he got the letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the basic levels of the violation process, obviously documentation is really important. Our letter templates that go out, you can include a small picture of what's going on, but it's always important to take pictures, whether it's something your manager finds and it's blatant, they're parking in the fire lane and whose car it is, that kind of thing, or if they have something screwed into the wood and that's against the community guidelines. It's important to document, important to so even if a board member brings it to the manager's attention, take a picture, send it to your manager so they have that documentation. Generally, not all cases, we generally start with a courtesy notice, simply informing the person of what's going on, whatever it may be. In some cases where it's a repeat offender, or if it's your standard, you might start with the first notice, which is also like the hearing notice, which kind of outlines the process for that person to offer a response or a rebuttal to the violation, basically a dispute. So I would say every case of governing documents that I've seen have that hearing process in place.
They do, yeah. So your governing documents usually has a finding schedule. It'll tell you first, second, third notice, and then what your finding schedule is, how much for each fine. The Michigan Condo Act, though, does require a hearing to be held before any fines are imposed. So when we do send that first notice / hearing notice, there is going to be a message in there saying you need to contact to request a hearing to be heard before the board, basically saying this is your right. If you'd like to have it, please reach out. We'll schedule that time with the board. And then typically we don't get that. And people don't usually appeal when their trash can's left out too long. They usually just take the trash can in. But if they would like to appeal that and plead their case for their trash can and fight a good fight, then, they're going to have to reach out to schedule that. And that is something that the board's going to have to hear. Typically, it's not going to be some big formal hearing. You can usually do this in an email and say, your manager will probably reach out and say, this violation, it's due to go to a fine. These are the notifications. On our end, we want to make sure that we're properly notifying those owners that they are in violation. We can't hold them responsible for this. We're not telling them it's an issue. But one of the big things with violations is and it's what you're looking to get out of it. So what is the goal of the association? Is it a penalty thing? Is it or is it compliance? You want the compliance. You're not looking to pick on somebody when you're sending these out. You need things to be in a certain order in an association. So it's really about compliance. So, I would encourage you, if people do reach out, and ask for maybe an extension, you do consider that and the reasons for their request, because ultimately it's not to get income for the association. Violation fine, that's not what you want. You want to give people a shot to correct those issues.
Well, and it's important to note with fines, a lot of Michigan courts have upheld that you can't just perpetually fine people for non-compliance. After you send 3-4 notices, whatever the process is in your bylaws, at that point, the board needs to send it to the association's attorney to have the attorney send an official cease and desist and demand letter for something. Don't just fine them until the end of time. Because as Nicole said, fines are meant for compliance, not as a punishment. And many courts have upheld that continuing to add fines is not enforcing compliance. It's really just a punishment, and then they back all those fines off. So ultimately, it doesn't solve anything.
So a late fee for not having their condo fee paid on time is legal because that's separate from.
Correct. Yeah, there's some older documents. There's not a separate schedule. There's may only be one schedule in there, and it applies to late fees, violations, whatever it may be. But newer documents have a separate schedule. Okay, here's your late fee fine schedule for that. Here's your violation fine schedule. But yeah, you can charge late fees as well.
Questions on violations? I know this is a hot topic.
I know, but just a little add-in. Better than pictures is Ring doorbell video.
That's pretty
Because I just went through this with someone.
As long as you can have the Ring doorbell attached without an alarm.
They know.
Yeah, evidence is key. So Ring doorbells, actually, that's a huge one for traffic violations, funnily enough, because that is one of the hardest things somebody said about you have to have rules that you can enforce. Traffic is a hard one. You gotta have those rules, but it's hard to prove. Ring cameras, that'll get you sometimes, if you're lucky. As a board, I guess. All right. So before we change here, and just any other questions on violations, like what's your guys' biggest issue on violations in your community? Is it trash cans? Is it parking? Trash cans?
Trash and parking.
Trash and parking. What else are you guys seeing that's your biggest issues?
Putting ornaments out, putting decorations out.
Yeah, holiday decorations out within a reasonable time.
We have an issue with sometimes the owner will live in another state, and when they rented that out, we said how many times to, we want to know, because that seems to be an issue in our area, because I think we're only allowed so many renters, but then what happens is you never find out about it, and then these people are doing violations, and like, who do it's just an issue like that, because they never know what's going on. They're living there, but we used to have. Yeah,
that's a really good point. So you actually probably have multiple violations there, and the first one is you don't have a lease. So I can say, I think across the board, no matter which association, you have to have this lease on file. You know, it might vary if you have to give 10 days notice to the board beforehand. But if you guys, especially as board members, you know what's going on more in your community than your individual manager is gonna know. So if you think, you know, you suspect this unit's being leased, you keep seeing different, you know, vehicles with different out-of-state plates, bring that to your manager. Your managers also, if you have a concern about this, we can go through the system and look at everyone's mailing address versus, you know, the billing address. And then that's just one tool that we can see. It's like, okay, well, you know, if their mailing address is somewhere in Florida, maybe they're not living here. We don't have a lease on file. So that, you know, that's something we can do on our end. It's kind of a lease audit and just send down. We usually do that as just a courtesy notice. It'll just say, hey, are you leasing? Please send us your lease. If you're not, just let us know.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things where we send things out or we go around and check, but then when nobody responds to anything, and then you're stuck again.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, that's when you keep escalating it and eventually get an attorney involved. Unfortunately, if you're adamant that you know this unit is leased, there's, like she said, out-of-state plates there all the time, different people, short-term leases maybe, it's different people every other week, then engage the attorney at that point.
Yeah, because I think in ours, I think we only have, in fact, we'd like to eliminate it. It was just a thing among the board that we tried to eliminate that type of thing. I think they allow, I think it's 10. We have 148 units, and I think they did 10, but where that's actually at now, I honestly don't know.
And that's a good point. That is something that really should be known. You know, how many units you have leased is something that can, you know, it can affect the warrantability. It's something that, you know, lenders can consider. And especially if it's in your governing documents that you have, if it's a 10% cap, some of them it's a percentage, some of it's a unit cap. But it's definitely an important thing to keep on top of. Other violation questions?
Just one.
Yeah.
Do any of you have problems, or are you having with dogs? Or do you?
That's a good one.
In regarding people not picking up their.
No, I mean, do you allow them? Does you allow?
They say 2, I think it is, but no telling. I mean, some have these monster dogs.
Because we're supposed to be no pets, but now we're getting this, we did do a supplement to the bylaws several years ago about emotional support and of course a service animal. And I was not on the board at that time, but the people that did that now regret that they put the emotional support in, because now we don't, you don't know who's who, but all of a sudden there's all these dogs that it's like the lease, we can't keep track of. Is this an emotional support dog or what? And so now I'm getting complaints from some people about a barking dog and a guy that's walking a dog. And
that's a really good example, and that's one that really has to be handled delicately. Obviously, you don't want to be accused of discrimination, ADA considerations with that. With service dogs or emotional support animals in particular, with condominium and homeowners associations, it's not really black and white as far as this is emotional, this is service, that it's either like a yes or no, and how a board has to ask for it is asked through your managers or through your attorney.
Yeah,
you can start with your manager, and it's appropriate for your manager. They can reach out, and we know how to ask the question. Now, if they're going to fight you on it or kind of give you pushback, it might have to go to the attorney. But we do have to consider what the courts say about what counts, what we can ask for, and that's a delicate one. So if you have any hesitations on it about asking for it, issuing a letter, I would definitely talk to your manager, talk to your legal counsel on that one.
We've had not so much with our dogs and that, but it's a little bit hard because we have one association and they're right there, right across from you is the homes, and then we have the condos. And I don't know if they ever said anything to our project manager, but one of our unit owners was walking their dog, and the people across the street, I don't know how their dog got out. It was a pit, and it attacked their dog. and when they were walking, and they had to actually get other people to come and separate the dogs. Now, they did pick up the cost, the homeowner with the dog, but see, I don't know if there's even anything you can address with that. I asked if they took it to their property manager, but that I honestly don't know, because their dog had to go in for stitches and all this other business, so it's like, they mentioned it to me, but
Yeah,
I said you need to talk to,
We
unfortunately,
had a repeat problem with the German Shepherd. After the second attack, they made them get rid of that dog.
Yeah, and so typically the association doesn't have much authority, like for a first instance of that, but if it's, like you said, a repeated or a documented, if you can reach out to animal control, the board can get a copy of the incident report where the dog attack occurred. And then there's typically language in your governing documents about aggressive animals or dangerous animals. And if you can prove with a report that the animal attacked another animal, then it typically meets that requirement.
if it gets to that point.
If it gets to
I
that
would say definitely in those kind of cases, reach out to animal control, the authorities. I mean, you guys as the board, us as the managers, that we really want to look at that as that this is a co-owner to co-owner kind of issue. If there's not exposure or liability for the association at all right here, you know, it's unfortunate. It's their issue. We need to document. And like Lee said, if that's the way we have to, that animal needs to be handled, we can go that route, but animal control.
right, well, that's what I mentioned to them, you need to make that known to the
Exactly.
property manager. I don't know if they ever did that, but, you know.
Yeah, so, and yeah, they would have to advocate for themselves, so they have to let us know if they, you know, put it in through the portal, call, email, you know, the portal's the best way.
Oh, that's another issue for
I do have a slide for portal.
On the violations, I found out that the best way to resolve some of the violations is issue the first one, and that person's gonna squeal on 3 other people that are at violations also. So then you find out, your response to, yeah, you'd like to at least know by phone, but for a person you talk to that has a violation, they're gonna tell on 2 or 3 other
Yeah.
people and expect all of them to be enforced. Leading right into what you got there, there's also, I draft a newsletter. I mean, I type it up for us for a board, but when we put that newsletter together, we'll tell what violations, or not by specific people, but we'll tell what things people are consistently speeding through the complex or not keeping their dogs on a leash. We'll remind people of what things that need to be done in the newsletter, send a draft of it to our property manager, and the portal, I want to say the portal, they e-blast it out. KS sends out an e-blast to all of our emails of record, owners and renters, and that works phenomenal. And if we do one a month or once every 2 months, we detail anything that's going on, any construction projects, anything that's concrete work that's going to be happening. And then we encourage people, if they have an objection or a maintenance issue or something, to call in and put the phone number in there. But the portal system, oftentimes older people don't want to go on the portal, or they don't know how to get on the portal. But the e-blast system, when they blast out the newsletter, is a lot easier for people to open.
Yeah.
All they have to do is know how to do it through here.
Well, I'll tell you, I listen to all these people, I'm glad I live where
Well, and Greg, that's a good, I mean, your newsletter is amazing. I've seen it, but it's a good idea to have newsletters. Nicole's going to dive into that next, but pick say on the front page, here's the top 5 violations that we see. Here's the next 5 projects we're doing. Do short little lists of bullet point things to show the important issues in the community, what the board's working on, things homeowners should focus on. Adding that kind of detail in there keeps owners updated. They know the board's doing stuff. They know where their dues are going. And it's not just a reiteration of the bylaws being sent out. No one's going to read that.
What if you have problems with other boards?
It removes the I didn't know answer to the problem. But we have 144 units. Well, you're talking, I think you probably got very few units.
Well, we got 103 houses, but we got.
The guy that did it on the clip.
Yeah, that's a great point. Newsletters, newsletters are really a great tool.
I have such an issue with.
How many of you guys do have newsletters in your communities? Oh, great.
The only newsletter is our annual meeting.
Okay.
Stop.
All right, so we're gonna have to work on the newsletters over here. No, it's a really great tool. It's great if the board can collaborate on the newsletters, usually drafted by the secretary. If you have a template of just important things that you want to keep on there, as you see in your sales report, we always publish, the sales for the year. So I've seen some communities do like how sales are trending and, what the average price was for last year and say, we've increased this year and just kind of show them the feedback. But again, the content for the newsletters, it's going to come from the board. You guys have that information and I think best how what your community needs to know, how often they need to be informed about things. So newsletters is a huge thing. Like Rick was saying, we do a lot of broadcasts. So broadcast, if you have something that needs to go out to the community, regular board updates, those are always good. Send that to your manager and we can get that sent out in a broadcast.
Before you go any further.
Yeah.
I'm on the board and a lot of times I don't even know what's going on and they might have done things already.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, we haven't had a meeting and I can't tell you.
We were having that with the other name. But now.
Is that some
board meetings? We haven't had board meetings. I can't tell you when.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I don't like to complain like that, but it's like they ask me, I say, I have no idea, and I'm on the board. I don't know anything that's going on.
Each of you all are. As board members, you're all equal on the board. So if you think that maybe you're not getting enough engagement from the rest of the board, and you think we need to have a meeting, we haven't had one in a while.
Well, that's the new schedule.
Reach out to them.
You're the president.
Yeah,
reach out. Tell me what's going on. I'm not going to do everything.
Yeah. I would definitely reach out.
Five, I think, on the board.
Yeah, I would, as Nicole said, I would communicate to your manager then and say, hey, we haven't had a meeting in a while. The other board members don't seem to be. Put it on your manager. Let your manager call a meeting.
I know. It's like
you guys pay us for meetings, so you should schedule them.
Oh, yeah, well, this is done. And it's like, I don't want to stir it up.
When you have a meeting and you only got 3 or 4 people showing up, the manager feels like it's a waste of time.
That's probably true. We get paid either way, so it is what it is. I mean, we get paid, so it's really for you guys. It's what kind of community do you want? What kind of board member do you want to be? Do you want to be the one that doesn't come, you don't go to meetings, you don't give people updates and newsletters? I mean, you guys being in this group right here tells me that that's not this group. But you see that a lot. So I would definitely encourage your other board members to be more engaged. And if they don't want to be, encourage somebody else. Somebody else wants.
Nicole, if you don't mind, I'd like to chime in just a second. Because I know this is a challenge that we had at our particular association, and I've been the president almost 4 years now. And I can definitely tell you that we meet monthly, but it is I would talk to your board president, and I would suggest that you do have regular meetings and that you set a certain cadence to ensure that you're getting, things done within your association and in your community and working with your management company. And Nicole, like she said, they do get paid regardless whether you're having those meetings or not. So I would definitely utilize that time just to make sure that you guys are getting things done within your communities.
Thanks, John. That's a great point. Okay.
Yeah, we definitely want to keep moving so we can get everything in tonight that we had planned for everybody and cover all the topics.
Okay.
I think the next thing was really like the methods of communication. Obviously, we have the broadcast, email, newsletters. Some things go out by snail mail if it's official things like your annual meeting notice.
Yeah, and it's important with communication. There's many of you mentioned, okay, people don't have computers. We're seeing a lot of different types of people moving into condos. Typically in the past, it's been people that are generally older that don't want to do maintenance. They want to have someone cut their grass for them, but we're seeing a shift of younger people condos. So you have to adapt to that. You have hybrid meetings like what we're doing now. The younger people are gonna join on hybrid meetings. Adapt your communication, e-blasting it out, posting it if you have a communication board in a common area, posting it there, handing out newsletters, mailing them out. It's important to just have different types of communication so you can touch everyone and get their best communication. Nicole's going to talk about another one later where we can send out text communication. So it's stuff like that that the board can adapt and send stuff in the way that works for your community, the people that live in your community.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the next point about transparency and accessibility, we've kind of touched on that. But, that's things, partially that you do, partially that we do, posting the financials to the portal monthly so people have access to that. So a lot of boards do open sessions with their board meetings where co-owners can are invited to attend, whether it's virtual or in person.
Yeah, I think I'll just touch on the bit of communication that Lee hinted at. And I'm excited to tell you guys, you're the first ones to learn this. We are going to be rolling out this new communication. It's basically an artificial intelligence text messaging bot. So has anybody heard all this news about the new AI and this generative text and everything?
Artificial.
Exactly. So it's the way of the future. But I know I heard somebody say earlier, it's sometimes it can be difficult to get owners to sign into the portal. So we have all this stuff, but we still can't even get them to sign into it. So what this new program is, it's going to be just a phone number. You're going to be able to send a text message to it. So as long as we have your phone number linked to your account, which we have just about everyone's, you're going to be able to send a text message from your phone. You can say, what's the next assessment due? Okay, and you can say, okay, well, can you send me my ledger? I want to see my ledger for the last year, and it will text you a ledger. You can text it and say, oh, I think I see some water coming in my ceiling, and it'll say, it sounds like you need to send a work order. Do you want me to send that to you? And you just can text, yeah, and it'll send a work order straight to your manager. And it's 24/7. It's all the access. It's going to have all the documents. So if people, we have the alteration modification forms on there. That's always a struggle for people to find it, to submit it. They're going to be able to text it and say, I need to fill out an alteration form, or it doesn't even have to be in those terms. They could say something like, I need to replace my windows. And it's going to know how to have that conversation to get them to, it sounds like you need this form to be able to do this all via text. So it's really cool. We're really excited to roll this out. It's something we're going to be able to actually do text messaging with as well. So like a mass text messaging in addition to like the broadcast emails. So we're very excited about it, and that is going to launch April 1st. So keep a lookout. It's going to be really cool. Very exciting.
April 1st with the caveat if everything works well.
If everything works well.
Always add that.
Thank you.
It's gonna take April Fool's Day.
Right.
I'm saying, oh, this is a joke.
So we're really excited about that. And I think one of the best features is you don't have to even have registered for the portal. You don't have to sign into the computer. You don't have to have a computer. You can have this all just sent right to your text message. Everybody can text message.
Even if you have a flip phone, you can send a text.
All right. Okay. I think we covered this one decently. We did. All right. Just quickly, we'll touch on board meetings. I apologize. We are running out of time. So I'm sure we have different groups in this room on how often you meet. John, who joined earlier to speak to us, Don and Amanda, he's the president of one of our historic high rises in Detroit. They have a lot going on. So they are one of our boards that they do meet monthly. They need it. Some only meet quarterly, bi-monthly. Those are the typical ones you'll see. I would say anything less than quarterly, you need to just touch base. And even if it's just a quick Google Meets meeting, just say, hey, where are we at? Maybe let's get a spring walkthrough, just at least to touch base. If you let that communication go for that long, even if things are running well and if things are good, you have all your contracts in place, always good to get that touch point. As far as agenda creation and distribution, this is going to vary by board and by association. But typically, you're going to get a management report from your manager at a minimum the Friday before your board meeting. Your manager's going to have an agenda on there. They're going to base that. There's going to be some standard things in there. We're always going to have your financials, work orders, violation reports, those kind of standard things. And that's really just the static snapshot of where we are. You can also go in and pull all those reports anytime and have the live data. So when we're doing our meetings, we're going to put the financials in there, but we don't want to sit there and go line by line and reading these GLs. You guys know how to do that, and I think you know what you're looking for there. So when we're doing our board meetings, we want to talk about quotes. We want to talk about what are the goals. So right now, meeting with my boards, I'm scheduling spring walkthroughs. Do we have everything on our list that we know we want to do this spring? Do we need to put speed bumps back down? Just all those things. So we make sure we're covering all our bases. So that's the manager's side. A lot of presidents will also create their agenda for the meeting. And the president does typically run board meetings. They'll call it to order, run it, and we'll, as the managers, just kind of have our presentation, and we'll work those both together. Did we get that on the agenda? All right. Conducting board meetings, just quickly, John kind of touched on it. Open and executive session. Does anybody do open sessions, or is it usually just closed? Closed. Yeah. Owners do have a right. Owners do have a right, though, to come to some meetings. So, and especially if you have a lot going on, I'll talk about Garden Court again. They're doing elevator modernizations. There's a lot changing there daily. So that board will do separate meetings, just like a town hall with their owners. And a lot of times you have to remember, you guys as the board, us as the management company, we're getting all this information all the time. So we can kind of sometimes take it for granted that we have all this knowledge. And so it's always good to touch base, at least, even if you're not inviting them to your open session meeting, to make that time to touch with the community. And then taking minutes, that is typically handled by the secretary. Most boards will have the secretary take minutes. Minutes they're critical. It might just seem like something that we do when we put it in the folder, but they're a legal document. They're a record. As far as us as the managers, if we approve a quote or a contract, and you want that to get sent for approval, we really need those minutes in our hands before we can sign that on behalf of the association. So it's important to make sure that those minutes are accurate. You're capturing the things that you need to capture in there. And then we also offer a service if there's any associations that, maybe your minutes are lacking and you want to tighten them up, or a lot of times people don't want to take minutes. They don't know why. It's such a fun thing. But that is something that we do offer a service, an outside kind of third party. So if that's a thing you struggle with, talk to your manager on that. Questions on board meetings?
No, I take our meetings, so Joe's always said, oh, you do great meetings, minutes, no, I don't, I have no problem with that, it's just all the other little newsletters.
Oh, yeah.
The minutes are intimidating, right? I mean, and they don't have to be an account of who said what, it's the account of the board as a whole, which actions you took, and what you decided on doing.
Well, and I think that's an important point, John. I mean, we could devolve this into a whole minute conversation, but minutes should not be 20 pages of Bob said that, and we disagreed, they argued for 20 minutes. Minutes should be, this motion was made, it was approved, it was not approved, next item. They should be bullet point lists.
Shortened to the.
Yes, exactly. 1-2 pages max. There's some that I've seen that are 17, 18 pages, and I scream a little. So the next thing that we're going to dive into here quickly is the portal. So each time we do one of these seminars, we pull up the portal a little, show a few items. So in this instance, John's just going to pull up the portal quickly and show you the board aspect and a couple of the quick reports you can run. We're not going to dive into everything in the portal. Maybe.
I can't even get in that. Get that beginning, I have a hard time with it.
This never changes. It's the same today as what it was 6 months ago.
So there is, it's not the same today as it was 6 months ago. So every month, a management report and is uploaded at a minimum. All the reports are live.
And I'm doing something different, something wrong, but I go into the portal and it's the same today as what it was 6 months ago.
Yeah, we'll get touch base with your manager on that because we can do a little tutorial for you on the portal if you can't access it or if you're having issues or if you have questions. Because the portal does update on a daily basis, even just people submitting, homeowners submitting questions to the management company, to the board, submitting an alteration request. You guys as board members can see that. And so there's stuff changing on here every day.
So this is we do have a sort of test association that's all the co-owners are the presidents. This one is George Washington. He is I believe the board president, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So we've kind of built this out a little bit with a couple examples just to show you how things work. So obviously these top, say 7 items are things that everybody in the association can see when they log in. The one that is specific to the board is the board actions tab. It's a drop-down menu. It'll have, all things that are pertinent to board members. The most valuable thing, I think, for board members that we would want you to take away from this, probably the report section, because it can dive into all kinds of things. A lot of them are financial, pertinent to this meeting, violations. Of course, it's going to launch a new window, and I won't be able to show you that.
But yeah, well, that's okay. So you guys are able to run these reports, so you can view them, you can download them. When you do open up any of these reports, you're able to change the date range as well. So if you want to see how many violations we sent from January 1st to today, you can customize that date range, and you can do that for any of these reports.
I didn't get that. Can you try again?
See, there we have artificial intelligence. So we can dive into, like I said, we can do tutorials with you if you need anything for your portal specifically, but we'll dive back into the presentation here. But as John said, the reporting section here, as board members, you can run any report that your heart desires. You can look at violations, you can look at delinquencies. Anything you want to look at is live in there at any time. You can run a report just like we would internally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of the things you're going to see, like in a management report, are the same things that we would pull that you have access to live at any given time. Current to the date, not even the last month. I will come back.
Nicole, you mentioned sales report earlier. Where would that be?
That's a great question. So the sales report is actually something we track on an internal spreadsheet. So that's something that's typically included in your management report, but it is updated every time we get a sales inspection for your community. So if you meet quarterly or maybe it's not something you see all the time, you can always just request it from your manager. And they can just send you that as it comes out. That's a great question.
Okay.
That's not what you think.
Yeah, there's certain things that we'd like to see our software do in the future that we've already been doing for years. So that's always an ongoing process.
It's a good question. Sales reports and utilities spreadsheets, we're still working on running those. You can see, all the invoices for the utilities, but the spreadsheet, how we track that year over year, that's also one of those internal ones. But again, if you're ever curious, you want to know, just ask your manager. And this stuff is updated every time we get an invoice. But you always can go in and see the invoice images. All right. Oh, no audio. That's okay. We'll leave Tom. That's just a quick video from CAI. We won't harp on this too much. Obviously, you guys are ahead of the curve. You are here at our webinar. So great for that. We are big advocates of board education here. So CAI, has anybody heard of CAI? Excellent, great. Good. CAI is Community Association Institute. That's the professional nationwide and worldwide, right? Worldwide organization. That's our professional, is where we get our designations and credentials, continuing education through. We can send you guys out the link, but they do have, in addition to just education for managers, they have a whole different section of education for board members. And then actually, Garden Fort, one of my associations, John had joined earlier, they actually, as the association, joined. So it's something you can enroll your whole board in as CAI members. Then you're going to be able to get discounts on their education classes. They hold expos. It's a really great resource. So we can get you guys out the link for that. They have a lot of useful, there's a blog, there's just all kinds of useful tools that can help you in this industry. Lee already kind of touched on individual portal tutorials. This is one of my things that I really do like to do. So I would encourage you to reach out to your manager. Kristen also is really great at the front desk for walking you through the portal. But, especially if you're like a treasurer and you really want to know how to get into these reports, what you can do, how you can customize it, we'll walk you through and just have a one-on-one and go through this portal on the board side until you're comfortable with it. So definitely reach out to us. We can do that anytime. Annual Chaos Expo. Who went to the expo last year? All right, yeah. So our expos, that's something we're really proud of. We do it every year. We have a lot of the big vendors throughout this area, a lot that our associations use. We'll bring in a lot of different people for that. So we'll bring in paving people, we'll bring in reserve study companies. So you guys can talk to these contractors, vendors, and we also do education there in webinars. Well, you're at one, so there we are. Question on education trainings?
Have you, as a management company, are we part of the CIA group? You had indicated we're a member.
That's a good question. So no, you're not automatically. There is a cost for registration. That is something that typically an association will pay for that cost. It's an investment in the association to have educated board members. And I think it's, I want to say around $200 for 5 to 7 board members.
Higher than that.
John, do you know?
It's higher than that.
How much is it, sorry?
With our 5 board members, it was like $350.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a tiered schedule. So it's like if one individual person joins, it's X dollars, but then you can register, like you said, like 1 to 5 board members is X dollars. If you have a 7-member board, it's tiered for that.
But their magazines are so great.
And you get to see articles that I write all the time are in this magazine.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, he actually has an article in the latest magazine.
We do.
And actually the magazines are, I think they're available. Are they online for free, or do you have to be a member?
They're on our website as well. We publish them on our website.
CAI, are you the website too?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh.
So yeah, if you go to our website, Chaos Management Services, we have an education tab on there where we're going to put our webinars on there so people can review those afterwards. We have different articles that we find helpful in the industry, some that are written by some people here. So we try to put useful resources on there.
Yeah, if you haven't been on our website recently, I would encourage you to just check it out. We changed it a lot within the last several months. We have a marketing person now that works here, so she's been making it all fancy, adding a lot of educational resources, blogs, videos, articles. So it's really useful for you as members as well.
Next slide.
Just, yeah. It goes out there.
Okay.
A couple plugs here, just to support some of our sister companies. This is just an overview of the KS Landscaping, which is our, the landscaping arm of gas management, just plugging some of their services that they do. The next slide will kind of highlight some of the maintenance capabilities as well as new programs coming out.
Yeah, just one other thing on landscaping. I'm sure you guys all know that we do have our sister companies, KS Property Maintenance, KS Landscaping. So we do have additional services. You might be in a contract with a landscaper that you love. Sometimes it's still good if you're doing like a big project to get bids on those things. So it's a resource. You know, we're here. We always have our sister companies, you know, support the associations we manage. So, you know, if there's something you need, you have a tree down, you can't get anybody out there, you know, we have this option, so it's there. Okay, and then another new thing we're excited to discuss is we are rolling out a new co-owner maintenance plan. So this is a little separate from the meeting, but just something that we're going to try to do with our maintenance company. It's almost like, think of it almost like I don't want to say a subscription, but basically it's something you can pay for an annual service. You're going to get an annual inspection, and then they're going to come out throughout the year, check your HVAC coils, clean the condensate drain lines. I'm sure everyone has a condensate drain line horror story, an insurance claim to tell. So that's a big one. So then those are just things that people sometimes they don't even realize it's their responsibility until it leaks and then they have a bill back on their account. So just something to encourage really proactive preventative maintenance. You can probably notice as a theme is we're really trying to be proactive on things. And then a lot of our owners, you know, are elderly. They can't get up and change the batteries on their vaulted ceilings. So we definitely offer these services down here a la carte. I'm not sure if you can see it, but we do have handouts here. And this is for anybody. If you wanted to do, you know, maintenance inside your house, we do have that company. If you are signed up on the maintenance program, the annual program, you're going to get a discount on hourly labor, a $10 discount per hour on any other, you know, caulking, anything you can think of maintenance wise.
And I think a lot of this was born out of recognizing problems that were a huge burden to our associations, especially with condos that were uppers and lowers, where they'd have leaks into the next one, and you know, just folks that weren't paying close enough attention to, you know, water heaters, the condensate lines for your AC unit, things that can cause problems that might result in an association insurance claim and have an effect on everyone. So it was kind of born out of something to be proactive about.
And we have a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people move into condos because they don't want to maintain a house. They move in and they say, oh, everyone's taken care of. So this is a supplement to that, where the things that they're still responsible to take care of within their unit, they have a way now to get that taken care of for them. And we have I'll hand out these little postcards to everyone, but it covers these items. But then we also have one that's called a snowbird service. So a lot of people go to Florida for the winter, or maybe go up north in the summer. It's a service where we'll go out and check, especially in the winter, make sure the heat's working, make sure there's no leaks, make sure there's no frozen pipes that could burst and flood a unit when no one's in the unit. So we're launching this here now. Again, you guys are the first to hear about it. So we'll hand out these little postcards. But if you have any questions on it, let us know.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.